Ani and hi all. Thanks for joining me for another video in this series where I will be reading from my middle grade book, Gidjie and the Wolves. Yesterday we read the chapter 3 stories down, not up, the first chapter, and today we're going to read Opossums Make the Best Friends, which is chapter 2. Carver, is that you? Gidjie lifts her head an inch to give the slightest glance in the direction of the commotion. She knows it's him. It's always him. A pink nose pops up above the counter across from her. Then a long, furry snout with teeth poking out each side. Finally, an entire furry head is sitting there. Hey Gidjie, did you finish it yet? Carver asks, notably hungry. Oh good, it's my opossum friend, Carver, she says, avoiding his question on purpose. Very funny. So, did you? And he's alive, she adds, giving him a stare. Your grandmother startled me this morning, he says, before turning to look over his shoulder. Sorry about that, Nookamis. Nookamis doesn't seem to hear him, as she is minding to Bluebell in a large dry basin built into the floor of the rising room nearby. It is of sufficient size and depth so as to completely conceal the goings-on within. Vents along the bottom of the basin provide warm airflow, allowing for the quick rise of Bluebell's many forms of dough. Nearly neon green, flowery dust is flying up in poofs from out of sight every little while, accentuating the air. They can hear Nookamis talking to Bluebell, getting her ready for her rise. A quiet lullaby begins. It is a song of love and thanks. Bluebell has given many loaves of bread over the course of her lifetime, and for every loaf of bread, she works hard to rebuild her dough stock. Why, at this very moment, while Bluebell is here in the rising room, she is also in the incubator room, enjoying recuperation time with special minerals and spices to keep her healthy and growing until her next divide. It is an old arrangement, this giving and receiving of companionship, love, and bread between her and them. One that Gidjie isn't aware of the origin of, given she's never had the notion to ask about such things. Just out of sight, Nookamis is sporting a slick suit with a hood of rainbow-colored goggles. Covered in oil and slippery but for her boots, she is kneading Bluebell as she rises. Gidjie loves that job. It's fun to bounce and do belly flops on Bluebell as she grows. It always feels a little like a farewell party, however, for once Bluebell reaches her peak rise, she takes on a more regular dough-like form. The task of rising Bluebell isn't suited for Nookamis's animal form of blue jay, at least not yet. The part that is suited for a bird is one of Gidjie's favorite things to watch her grandmother do, but it's not time for that yet. Her attention is brought back to Carver. I'm sure you probably startled her too, seeing how she found you dead on the 4th floor, she says, stalling the answering of the original question he had asked. She wasn't actually upset for any other reason than the fact that Carver has always had more access to the 4th floor where the ancient trader's market is. The 4th floor is also home to the middle door, as well as trade tunnels that lie on the other side of the door and extend into the beyond that Gidjie has never stepped foot in. See a little illustration there. She knows she shouldn't get mad at him for it. It's not his fault she's human and has thus far been forbidden to use the middle door. She would get less upset, however, if he weren't always brushing her off about what's in the tunnels when she inquires. He doesn't seem to think it's a big deal she's never been beyond the middle door, and his answers are usually along the lines of, it's just tunnels and spiders and stuff. Again, sorry, he says, his little furry hand reaching up onto the counter to grab at things, before turning his palm upwards and question, but what about that dough? Which one would that be again? She raises an eyebrow and looks up to the ceiling, feigning a memory lapse, but unable to stop a smile from creeping across her face. The dough in question isn't ready yet, but she's not about to tell him that. Not with all of her previous boasting about being so close. And not that she's ever been one to boast, She just really wanted to get it right, but hasn't yet. You know, the one you've been working on all winter and all spring and is finally ready to go into the oven. That's what you said yesterday and the day before and the day before, and it would be really great if I could get a taste sooner than later. What were you doing down there anyway? Gidjie interrupts him mid-pasturing, getting the feeling there's something he's not telling her. Being that she's only ever allowed on the 4th floor when there's a delivery too big for Nukamus to handle alone, she's genuinely curious. When she is allowed down there on such occasions to wait by the middle door, she tries her best to get a good look at whoever the delivery person is and anything notable about them. Tail fishing? He says with a toothy, nervous smile, holding up the tip of his tail. Gidjie leans forward to inspect it for bite marks, which would be a sure sign he'd been using his tail as bait. But then I got tired. He drops his tail before she can get a good look. And your house was closer than mine, so I thought I would. His weird behavior makes her give him a good sideways squint, but she moves on. Thought you would scare an old woman? A skittish chuckle pops out of his lips that tighten quickly to contain it. She reaches across the counter to wipe a little flour on the tip of his nose. He sneezes mightily. Flour flies up and settles onto both of their faces. They laugh until their sides hurt, pointing at each other, and decide not to pressure the other to talk about the things they obviously don't want to talk about. That is the end of the chapter. Next time, we will be reading the chapter, A Few Things About Intermediaries. Thank you for joining me again for another video in this series where we're reading from my middle grade book, Gidjie and the Wolves. If you have any questions, please leave them below. And so I will say, Gigwabamin, Minawa, Nagudge. I will see you again later. Miigwech.